coming to you from the historic Hart Building in Marysville, California, in Studio 93, In the Tank with Fish, with your host, Bob Fischetti.
Well, welcome to another of the great adventures of being in the tank with Fish and Minnow, although Minnow's not here today. So I feel free just for Minnow. Just want you to know I can still man spread, whether you're here or not. I can still think of Cheeto bread. I can do all these things. But I mostly just want to thank you for doing this with me. And she's busy, but I have none other than, I don't know how I even met this gal. We're going to talk about it, but she's definitely the real deal. And so we're going to talk about just how real Lacey is. So without any further ado, I have Lacey with me. Are you
Good
ready
to see
for
you.
this?
Yeah, I don't know. That was quite the introduction.
Was it?
I don't think I can man spread like you can. So we'll have to work to teach me your ways.
Yeah, you know, Kelly's boys told her that. She was trying to get room on the couch, and they're like, Mom, I'm
spread out.
spreading. And I thought, Kelly thought, is that even a thing?
That's a thing.
It must be a thing, right? And I didn't even know about it. So how did I meet you?
How did we meet? Oh, you know, the Brian Milbeck Memorial Park interview that I did with Yuba County Sheriff's Office here with you. That's how we met. But, you know, I really think we met. It was a divine intervention.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. You're quite the enjoyable character.
So are you, Fish.
You have to be a character to be part of life, right? You know, if you try to get too serious, it really seldom works, right? You know. So where did you grow up? Where did you are you a native California?
Yes.
You are?
Yes, I love California. Despite all the things that we go through and, you know, the mass exodus that we've seen in the last decade or so,
They're coming back.
I'm a California girl, so here we are. We'll welcome them back.
Well, East Coast girls are hip. Anyway,
Beach Boys.
I'll stay away from that, right? So, I mean, but what area did you grow up in?
Sacramento. So,
okay.
Mom and family were military babies. My grandpa was in the military, so they kind of came from other places and landed in California in the late 50s, I think. And so Mom stayed and developed some roots here. And so I was born and raised in Sacramento, Tahoe Park / Oak Park area. Well, I was raised in Tahoe Park, but when Mom wasn't looking, I was in Oak Park.
I have a great fondness for Oak Park. I went to church down there at 34th and Y for 16 years.
Wow.
Right across from Sac High.
There's the little tire shop on 34th, and that's where I used to hang out, on 34th and Broadway.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
We got to be careful of going into there. Yeah. There was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. Do you know where that was on Broadway?
Yep.
Love that place. It's but they had like bulletproof windows and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I think we're in Oak Park now, right?
Yeah.
You know?
As soon as you crossed Stockton, Broadway and Stockton, you were in the park.
Yeah, it changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's funny. Lacey, you grew up there.
I grew up there, on Broadway, but down closer to the 65th area.
Yeah.
But I was back in I think we moved there in the late 80s. It was beautiful. You know, it was a nice little spot. Tahoe Park was very diverse, and I enjoyed it very much. Mom actually was a graduate of Johnson High School, which was right down the street. So then I later, in turn, was a graduate of Johnson High School. So kind of in the family. Yeah. A cool neighborhood. It was a very cool. Old houses from the 30s, you know, it was great.
Yeah, I grew up back east in St. Louis, and you know, the house you could buy a house back there with a stone porch that was 200 years old.
Oh yeah.
And then when they say, "Oh, this house is old; it's 50 years old," and I'm like,
"That's nothing."
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
That's like new construction.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I love being, and downtown Sacramento has a lot of that. Old Victorians, just great old homes. I worked construction for a while. I actually built a staircase on the front of one of those Victorians. What a nightmare. I would never do it again. Yeah. But you learn. And
I loved it down there, the Fab 40s. That's where we would go trick-or-treating, right?
Oh.
We would drive into the Fab 40s and go trick-or-treating because you got the king-size candy bars.
Yep.
That was good times.
Yeah, that was that wealthy area.
That's right. Yeah, Folsom and Folsom Boulevard. Yeah, small world. Fish, small world.
Man.
Yeah, so we grew up down there. I was an only child. There were 5 siblings. 6 with a chosen aunt of mine, but 5 siblings, and I was the only kid of
That's
all
crazy.
5. So I was just full of love at home. We were all, at one point all lived in the same 1-bedroom duplex. I think there were 4 adults and me, or 5 adults and me. So, and I grew up with a lot of love from my family. It was great.
Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do in life when you were in high school? Sometimes kids are like, well, this is what I want to be when I grow up, so to speak. Was that in the mix for Lacey at all?
I think so. We grew up musicians, musicians and artists. So my mom is a fan.
Which I recently found out.
Yes.
You're a musician.
I'm a musician.
How did I not know that?
Yeah, I love it. So my mom is an artist. She can sing, but she's mostly artwork.
Oh, okay.
She actually put the Beatles on an Etch-a-Sketch. That's how her brain works. She makes miniature art pieces that are, so that's her artistic talent. My grandpa, her father, was kind of a famous jazz musician in his day. He traveled with the Army band. He was not wanting to fight, but they made him enlist, and so he did the Army band.
Yeah.
And so the Johnny Nelson band traveled all over the world. He played for Senator Ronald Reagan, on the Bob Hope Show with Peggy Lee. So he got to play with a lot of the greats back then. And he was just on the keys, on the saxophone. He was the guy to
So
listen to.
what do you play?
Guitar. I like to sing. I play guitar. I can tinker with the piano, tinker with the drum set, but really I love playing the guitar and I love vocals. Vocals are my thing.
Every time I talk to you, I find more things we have in common. Mm-hmm. It's really good.
It's a divine friendship, Fish. I told you. It was set up.
Well, I'm not ungrateful. Trust
Me
me,
neither.
right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of get that. So you knew you wanted to be involved in music.
Absolutely. That's how, that's how we grew up, right? But as I started to grow, and I'll go back, but as I started to grow, realizing that music doesn't necessarily pay the bills.
Yeah.
It can, if you're lucky. But we grew up with not a whole lot of money in the house. We were, always, struggling. And so I knew I did not want to grow up that. I didn't want to become an adult and also be struggling.
Yeah.
So I had to find a place and something that I like to do. But I'll go back, and this is only something I've recently started talking about publicly, but I find it to be extremely beneficial for other people and for my own healing journey. But I was in the hands of a babysitter, unbeknownst to my family and my mother, of course, but for a year, from 3 to 4 years old, I was being babysat by a woman who was very abusive towards me, very abusive in many ways. And I don't think I'm ready yet to go into all of those details outside of my therapy office.
Understood.
But, that year was very formidable, though I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you look back in hindsight and you realize how something like that shapes you completely. And so I was shaped and altered from an early state. So after that situation, and like I said, it was off and on for about a year. And I think it changes a child. There's no way around it. You can't help but it changing you. And so later, when I became a law enforcement officer, my mother gave me a piece of paper and it said, what's your name? How old are you? It said 5. It's one of those little kindergarten, what's your favorite color? Who's your favorite friend? On the bottom, it said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I spelled cop at 5. So in my healing journey, of what happened, I can look back and find some level of gratitude. I don't think if that had happened to me, that I would have at 5 years old known I wanted to be a cop. What I knew about cops as a child was that they could protect you and that they could save you from things like this and they can put bad guys in jail. That's what you see on TV. So that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to protect myself.
Yeah.
Nobody was ever going to hurt me again.
Yeah.
I was going to be one tough cookie for sure. And, so as I grew up.
However, knowing that you cannot change the personality that God gave you, and you're very tenderhearted.
Sir.
So the combination of those two is amazing. Being able to walk through that and know, if I have to, I know how to put my foot down. I know how to do that. But for the most part, it's also created in me a genuine compassion for the ones who go through hard things.
That's right.
Because I know there is another side, right? Yeah, that's just, come on, that's just
true.
good stuff.
That's true. You know,
Not good stuff. I say this all the time. I went through some abuse, and it's like I know this is going to sound stupid, but I really don't care. So it's the things that were hard that did two things for my life. One, it shaped me in a way that made me more resilient. Mm-hmm. And then the second part of it is it made me not want to be isolated, but it changed me. I knew I could be outgoing. I could make connections with people. I could do these things. So it was not able to take my personality, which was God-given.
that's right.
So the situations caused me to be resilient and in the end, release who I really am. But at the time, you don't think that, right? You go through stuff. The other thing I learned, when you go through something with somebody else, it's kind of like the military. It builds camaraderie.
Yeah.
We've been through the battle together. Hey, we're good. We
That's
know, right? You had my back. I had yours. We're good. So I think, I know that the hard things, you're right. It does shape you. And you have to walk through them however long it takes. I was 35 when I started getting memories coming back. Mm. So I went and talked to somebody and they said, yep, that's how the trauma works.
Comes back later.
Because you're, just like if you get a wound, your body tries to protect it, right? Mm-hmm. So emotionally, if you don't have the emotional capacity to handle something, it just kind of goes deep until you do. And then it comes out and you walk through it, and it's just life, right?
It's just life.
But until that happens, you're having to figure out who am I and where am I, right? And then once that begins to happen, like you can identify it and say, I know that shaped me. It's like, oh, okay. So now it's like, all right, that was then. And I felt like it brought me in law enforcement. But it's like, where am I going to go now?
Yeah.
Right? Where am I going? Because I still have a whole lot of life and stuff to do. So what is going to happen now? And so that would be, my question would be, so you got to do that, and you got to be in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. You currently are, right? Yes. And so it gave you great opportunity to move. Like you said, I got to be tough. I know how to take charge of a situation.
That's right.
I know how to walk in, be the authority, because I was a cop at one point. And at the same time, I know how to have compassion with all concerned.
And I think that's it. And I honestly think that's what the world needs now.
Yes.
In their
exactly.
authority leaders, is that level of compassion, and I have the unique experience to get to work with dozens, hundreds of cops, law enforcement officers in some form of capacity every day for the last 18 years. And, for me, they have such hearts, and we get so, I think, hurt, jaded. You can't unsee, unexperience, unsmell some of the things that we go through. And I can see how it can shape and change a person. And, one of the things that I always said when I first started in law enforcement all those years ago was, I am not going to lose my heart. If I wake up one day and I stop loving people in general, then I'm going to find something else to do, because I don't have business putting this badge on anymore. And, I can still be aware, and I can still understand that not all people are good with good intentions, and still have situational awareness and all these different things. But at the same time, no, most people are good. Most people are just out here trying to survive.
We've promoted the negative for so long.
Absolutely.
Even about law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons with the radio station, I have all 5 entities of law enforcement on here, local. And I want people to know, these are real people. You have to view them outside of that uniform. But most of the time when they meet law enforcement, they meet them in a bad situation.
It's their worst day.
And so you're right. It does put the weight on officers to walk that out. But what a great experience. I didn't realize you'd done it that long.
I've been in law enforcement for 18 years. I've been sworn for 13.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So what do you want to do now, Lacey? Because you and I did talk about, you have a podcast that you were doing called Connect. And so let's talk a little bit about how you got there and why you think it's important. How did you start doing Connect?
Honestly, so I found myself in a slippery slope like 2019 into 2020. PTSD was setting in. Yeah. I didn't have the resources or internal tools or wherewithal or just honestly awareness of self to understand what I was going through.
Yeah.
It just one day led to the next. And it's just that slippery slope of PTSD and anger and depression and all the horrible things that come along with that. So going into 2020, I found myself at the front line dealing with some of these, I'm not going to be detailed about it, but there was a riot situation in the beginning of 2020 in our country. And it altered me that week, truly, truly altered me, a state of just anger. Mm-hmm. That was it. Mm-hmm. And just what you saw and experienced in this country, the division, the hate, the true violence. It, for me, being an empath, being a compassionate person, and, I often am silly enough and hippie enough to think a hug can solve our problems. And that was just not the case. And
unfortunately,
it just wasn't the case. We could not fix it. Nothing could be fixed. People were so angry, and so I, in turn, became angry. That was it. I just hit a wall at that point. And so I felt, looking back, I shut down. I shut down from life. That was it. Yep. My hands were up and that was it. And I just dove into this cycle of ultimate anger. And I just was not me. So I had a recent sit-down podcast with a gentleman named Trevor in Roseville. What a wonderful guy. And he gave me this phrase. And he says, because I called it almost an epiphany, like I woke up different one morning, like something needed to change. And he called it a download from God.
Yeah, and I've heard that and I've had that. So yes, absolutely understand that.
A download.
Yeah.
And I felt like a shift one morning. It was like, okay, what are you going to do about this? Because I'm not just going to sit back and let this take me over. And so, the thoughts started coming into my head. What do I want to see different? I wish people could come back together. What does that look like? How do we come back together? Connect. We have to connect with each other. And it was just a word that struck me. And over the series of a few weeks, I came up with the pillars of the word connect. So each letter in the word stands for something. And if you listen to the words, everybody knows what they mean. Everybody can provide a definition. Mm-hmm. Put them into action. If you and I are having an interaction with each other, whether it's for 5 minutes or we're married and we live together, we need to communicate. We need to be open. We need to remain neutral. We need to nurture one another. We need to educate one another. We need to have courage in the conversation, and we need to be transparent. If all 7 of those pillars are not together and one is missed, there will be a disconnect. There will be a breakdown in that. And that to me just stood out as what is needed. So a model, a movement for me has now turned into a coaching opportunity for the world.
Yeah, because if they don't initially connect and then they begin to function under those, they won't stay connected.
That's right.
And so the goal is, I tell people all the time, you may have major differences, but you're not going to change God. He told you to love your enemies. So, loving them doesn't mean that you get to connect, because sometimes they won't let you. But if you don't try, then nothing happens. And so connecting and then staying connected. Mm-hmm. So once you began to do that, is that when you decided I need to do a podcast? Because you knew somehow you need to get the information out. And is that the vehicle that you chose?
Essentially. So my initial thought about this was to run for office. I thought, well, if I'm going to do anything, let's change ways. Let's be the face. I want to be the face and be influential that way. And so, long story short, I signed up for my master's degree. I thought I need my master's degree in public policy. So I signed up for that. I sat with some local mentors, Gary Bradford, Denise Burbank, these people I reached out to.
Local people here.
Here. Yep. And God bless them. They took me under their wing, showed me some of the ropes, and I ran my first election for the local utility district here for Olive Hearst and won my seat there. And so this was the initial path I was on. And then I found myself, I love my seat. I just actually won my second term. Sworn yesterday.
I saw your Facebook post.
Yes,
and I was
sworn
like,
yesterday.
She looks really happy.
I love
this,
it.
you know?
I love doing this local community stuff. You know, and so my interest went from I want to go governor of California, you know, to no, I want to stay local. I love our community here. I love the immediate difference we can make doing these local seats. But I am a speaker in my heart. I am a speaker. Most people are afraid to stand on a stage. I thrive on it. So my favorite place in the world to be is the driver's seat of a cop car. That was it. I felt the most comfortable and the most safe in that seat. I felt the most effective and rewarded in anything that I've ever done. And then second to that, I found I have that same feeling speaking.
I tell people, they've asked me, how come you're not afraid to speak? And I can't answer that other than to say, it's just always been part of me. I played in the rock band. You got to be in front of people. I was a pastor for over 20 years. You get up and speak everything. And I've been involved over and over again. I mean, now I'm on radio and that, but it's like, I don't know why I'm not afraid. And I think in part because over the years, I've had people that have told me, the things you say are important. You need to realize there's a value. And so when they talk about gifting, I say, I got the gift of gab. So
I like that.
they say you got the gift of gab because you're not afraid. You're willing to do it. And if not you, then who? And so if you don't walk in that, if I didn't do what I feel I'm supposed to do, then I would feel, I don't know, there'd be a piece missing. So it's almost as though you didn't have a choice.
I didn't.
Because that's what I was telling you about, knowing that things like your personality, that God puts that in. I don't care what else happens, what he put in is going to stay there.
Yes.
And it eventually will be free.
That's right. It was there all along. I just had to find it.
Yeah.
Instead of speaking on a one-on-one level with people that I meet every day, I'm taking it to a more public level so that more people can hear it. And I think sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that my life is perfect or that I'm perfect. I use social media. Right. I know.
Can I write that down?
It
Kurt,
just
would you
came
put
out
a little
publicly.
note underneath there? Lacey's not perfect.
That hurt. That hurt. That admission made me very uncomfortable. No. I use social media on a positive note and in a very positive way. And, I don't spread dirty laundry on social media and whatnot, but I'm still a human being and I make mistakes every day. And I think people hold me to a higher standard because of the message I try to promote and how I try to, emphasize what's important to me to the world, but in that I still get to be person. I still get to make mistakes. Yeah, they don't want to allow that. No.
There are naysayers. The Bible talks about naysayers, and it's just people that's all they do. They speak against everything. I feel like, somewhere along the line they got broke, right? But one of the most amazing statements in the Bible is where God says that King David, was a man after his heart. And yet we get to read about all the fallibilities of David, his pride where he numbered Israel and 10,000 people die, right? The thing with Bathsheba, and he had her husband killed. And it's like, but yet he was a man after God's heart. I think the big part of that is being able to admit I'm not perfect. Don't try to make me perfect. Right. I may know some things, but I don't know all things. And when you talk about connecting, that's the whole point. Nobody has all the marbles. And if we remain disconnected, we will never come to the fullness of what God intended for mankind. And especially, like for the church or for like what you do in an entity. So there'll always be opposition. People say, well, what is she talking about? She doesn't know everything because I know this and blah, blah, blah. But you're not going to quit because you have purpose. Purpose will always override the naysayer because purpose comes from God and he's all authority. So you gain a freedom to be who you are, right?
So be human.
So you have the gift of gab, right? The scripture says we have this treasure in an earthen vessel. So your earthen vessel's always going to be a mess, right?
Yeah.
This bishop told me, you're going to drag that carcass all the way to the end.
Yes, I
And it's like, all right, I'll drag, right? And it's like, so man, I appreciate that. So the Connect became a mission, if you will,
yes.
Something where you wanted to see change. And you began to understand how that could happen. And did it come back on your own life?
Oh, it comes back all the time.
Yeah, good.
Every time I do make a mistake and I fumble, and people are not always going to stay in your life, and people will come and people will go. And that's what's been happening to me lately is, people are going. And it doesn't mean that I'm broken, right? It just... The Connect was there, and then it wasn't. And
well, I think you're moving.
Yeah.
There's a difference, right? I was born in Brooklyn. I don't know anybody in Brooklyn. I was raised in St. Louis. I don't know anybody in St. Louis. And now this is where God's placed me, and I know people here. And unless he moves me, which I don't think is going to happen now, right? I'm loving the connections I'm making. But sometimes it's not a physical move. It's a relational move.
That's right.
And I've had people relationally come in and out of my life, and then ones that I call them destiny helpers.
Destiny helpers. I like it.
People that you have a destiny, and it's as though God sends people in to do that. So if people leave, you're right. It's not necessarily a negative on you. Oh, none of us want to be your friend anymore. It's I'm being moved. So, Lord, would you show me where the new connections are?
Yes, sir.
But you don't stop doing what you're doing. You're not going to stop connecting. You're not going to stop what's been given you that works.
Yes.
That's just not going to happen.
I'm still a child of God.
Yep.
And he still gave me a mission. Am I always going to be perfect in that mission? Absolutely not. But nobody is, everybody is going to fumble. We're human.
So so I'm going to ask some questions.
Okay, let's go.
I'll put you in the hot seat for a minute.
All right, let's pretend like I'm in my therapy chair.
It's very obvious that you're creative.
Yes.
But you're also a bright girl. And so were your grades in school good? Have you always been where, I know you're talking about you went for your master's. Has school been easy for you or?
Wasn't always.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of ADHD and, as a kid, you just don't.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know how to decipher energy as a child. And actually my report cards as a kid said, and my mom has them to this day, good kid talks too much. No kidding. I will show it to you. Every year in elementary school, good kid talks too much. Can't stay in her seat. So I was always on the move and talking, go figure. And luckily my mom never stifled that in me. She just said, keep being yourself. Try to be respectful and be quiet, but keep being yourself. And so school was not always easy. I did okay. I did okay. Even in high school, I did all right. Decent grades. I think I started caring more in college, and then as an adult, you actually learn how to calm yourself. I think the freedom in college really worked for me too, because as somebody with a ADHD brain, I could have a computer and my phone and earpods with music in it, and I can listen and I can take notes. So I can do 10 things at once, and I actually thrive on that. I thrive on multitask. So if I just have to sit here and read a book, that's it. In 5 paragraphs, I'm out.
Yeah.
I have a hard time.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Although the older I get, the less I can multitask because it's like, I'll be doing something and I'll go, what was I just doing?
Wait, what did I come in here for?
Yeah, that kind of thing. It's like, I was reading that book. Why can't I remember it?
Yeah, right.
What I have found is that part of the aging process, and I studied gerontology in college, was one of the fields I went, is that it's short-term memory. But it doesn't mean that you don't remember it. And I've had to learn that things will come back to me, but maybe not in that 5 minutes. I mean, I can lose it in the middle of a conversation, be talking about something and shift gears and go somewhere else, but it'll come back to me. And so I do believe that it is what you're talking about, learning how to work with who you are.
That's right, yes.
Right? And instead, it seems like we're always trying to change people into some model, and the model nobody can define. Right? It's like what's normal, right? And it's like, well, for that kid,
Not me.
yeah,
I'm okay with it, but yeah.
you know, Lacey, they're going to make us sit in a whole different area when we go.
I know, it's true. You guys are sequestered too over here. Yeah.
So I like it. So, and we've talked about you doing a podcast here, or being on the radio and doing a radio program. And like I said, it does feel to me like you're moving and maybe moving into something and making new connections. And yet there are some things you're retaining. If you just got reelected to a position, you're not planning on leaving that position and the people that are there. But some of them might retire or move on, and you're in law enforcement. I don't know that wouldn't change, that God move and you end up in either law enforcement somewhere else, or a different type of entity where you could do that. But it would seem to me that you are very focused, but you're very capable of doing multiple things.
I thrive on multiple things, again.
And so you could, work with law enforcement, work with government, and go be a speaker traveling around.
That's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal would be a professional public speaker, to share, connect, and to share my experiences. I always say Tony Robbins, he's got competition now. I'm coming. And I've been actually watching this guy, Brandon Dawson. Have you heard of him? He wrote this book recently, 9-Figure Mindset. He's a little intense, but I like him. And so he's teaching me a lot of really great, very successful businessman techniques and ideologies and things. And he's a speaker too. So that level where that's what I'm getting paid to do full time would be the ultimate goal. I love law enforcement. I'm happy where I am now. I'm not leaving for a while, but eventually that would be the goal, to transition into something different.
Well, and I think that happens. I was a pastor here locally for over 20 years, and I had 2 churches, one here and one in Grass Valley. And when that changed, I was forced into a place of thinking, well, what do I do now? Right. And it's like, I just thought, I'm going to be a pastor till I die, right? Be in the pulpit, and it's like, little children, follow God. Right. It's like, and so it was like, okay, well, this is changing. It's what I talk about, things I think are a left turn, but they're really not. They're part of God's ultimate plan in bringing us where he wants us to accomplish his purposes. And I ended up getting invited to be a co-host on a radio program that we played rock and roll and talked about Jesus.
That's perfect for you.
And it just totally, next thing I know, here I am now. I got a station. We have podcasts. I got a TV studio downstairs, and God's adding to it. And it's why I feel like whatever is in you, if you'll allow him, he will bring it to the forefront. Based on a scripture says a man's gift will make room for him. And so I believe you're probably right, Lacey. The gifting that's in you, it'll just make room. And you've stepped into it. We have some of the connect gear here.
That's right.
And so speaking on that, it just, you never know. You can get an invitation any time. I read a book. There's books like the 10 effective things that leaders do, and I went through officer candidate school and learned military how they do it, and it's all these different things. But I'm amazed how many biblical principles
that's right, yes,
are involved in it. The truth is the truth. No matter how you package it, it's still true. And you grabbing hold of Connect, that recognizing first and foremost, united we stand, divided we fall. You have to look at the country and say, look, this is not right, right? Which I think this last election showed we're a little more unified than people realize, right? It was like the smaller number leading the masses, and that's changing.
Yes. Right?
Because the mass had a voice. And whether we agree with the voice completely or not, there was enough people that jumped on it and said, wait a minute, we have to look at the whole picture. The whole picture. Everybody's included. And so you can't change Washington unless you're there. And you can't change Sacramento unless you're there. But you're right. Where your feet are, You want to make a difference here.
That's right first.
And I think that's really the key, and that you seem to be set up to do that. So with all the people that work with you, where you work at OPUD, is it OPUD?
OPUD, yes.
Yeah. And it's like, how many of them have heard the Connect story?
I think some of them are watching what I'm doing online, They're very supportive. I don't think I've ever met a more cohesive group of people. We work really well together. We have no problem disagreeing respectfully, and most of the time we agree. So it kind of works out as a great board and just overall department for people, to be.
Well, I had heard about it. I didn't realize I knew everybody there.
Yeah, you do.
Till I did the Olive
Till the parade.
And then I'm like, what? Lacey's one? Because they said, oh, they're going to be the judges. I see John Flo, and I'm like, what? It's like all you guys, right?
Yeah. All us goofy people are just.
Yeah, what a great group, though.
Yeah. We do really well. It's very diverse.
And so you're doing posts now, but are you doing a podcast? Are you going back to that?
I want to. Yes, I absolutely want to. I was running Connect podcast. You can see some of the former episodes on my YouTube channel. You sent me
those. I was able to look at it, which I thought was really cool.
They were cool. It was
Santa just went by. Sorry.
See, our ADHD kicked in right there.
Did you see him?
I saw it.
He went by.
You can make a wish. It's like a shooting star.
Only 5 days.
That was awesome. Yeah, so I did Connect, my YouTube channel, just under my name. You can find it. But I want to bring it back. It stopped for a while. Life circumstances for everybody got in the way. But Connect ultimately is just a podcast. Sometimes it's just me sitting around like this with you, chatting, having a good time. And a lot of times it's bringing guests on that are doing amazing things in our world and our community. So, I have just some ideas of some guests. There's Jenna McKay, of course, who did a podcast with me, human trafficking survivor. What a story. She's got a book that she's done now, a movie that's coming out. I mean, what a cool guest for our community.
Are you ready for this?
I'm listening.
I'm interviewing her, and I've known Jenna for a while. And she said, well, Fish, we're neighbors. I said, oh, you live in Yuba City? She said, we're neighbors. I said, you mean you live on Main Street? She said, Fish, I'm your next door neighbor.
Get out of here.
She literally was right next door to me.
Didn't even know.
Was like, what?
Fish, take the blinders off when you.
No kid. It's like, do you know your neighbors? It's like, that's embarrassing.
That's so funny.
So now it's really great. I see her. Oh, Jenna.
Yeah, that's great. No, she's wonderful. What a wonderful lady. So she was a guest. Sounds like she was on yours. I've got some other folks with a childhood cancer group, Mama Bears with childhood cancer group, and they want to share their story and their kids and what they're going through, and just some great community stuff that's going on that our world needs to hear about. So just guests like that, and then of course just things like this, talking about how this came to be, how we can make other people better. I dive into, when I go do speaking engagements now, I dive into each one of the pillars, communication, the openness of your relationship. So at some point, maybe it'll become a coaching opportunity, one-on-one even for folks, but for now it's going to be kind of a movement. And my best friend, who's also a public speaker too, Angela Webb is her name. She runs Arrive Alive California. She's actually going to make it more of a global thing, Arrive Alive USA potentially. And they do fentanyl awareness and DUI, youth DUI related incidents and things like that. So she's my hero, and we are working on a huge project for 2026. And when it's ready to be released, I tell you, her and I together are a powerhouse. So we are going to elevate the world with what we have that we're working on between her model, my model Connect, and coming together for a local just movement, when we put a camera in the radio studio, we built the studio so it was more conducive to having more people in there to do interviews. Most radio stations, you're in a very small room, you're sitting across a desk, But the guy that was here with me, he said, when people are talking, they want to see them. So let's buy a Mevo. It was like $400, a Facebook camera thing where you could do it. And man, the minute we started doing that, I went, this is good. And people love the interviews. They watch them religiously because they get information. They get to hear about local people, right? But, for me, Lacey, it wasn't enough.
I mean, I love doing it. I interviewed this morning, but our interviews will run 30 minutes instead of 15, right? Because you can't really get there. But that's when the opportunity came up to think about doing a podcast room. Here, we can do 45 minutes easily.
Yes, sir.
Right? And so I can see with you wanting to interview and wanting to make what you're doing work to a larger audience. I could see where either one would work for you. You could do a radio program easily, where you could do it this way, where you could do the longer term interview, right? Mm-hmm. But I think, like me, because we have the gift of gab, 15 minutes or even 30 minutes. So I can see why the podcast platform would work very well for you.
Absolutely. Yes. And allowing the space and opportunity for these groups to be able to talk about what it is that they're working on, these people in these groups, and not having to cut them off at the pass, so to speak, because what they're working on is so influential and crucial to our world. And so I want to give them that opportunity, but also with the radio show, I mean, I'm a musician, right? So we can dive into that rock and roll. I was hanging out with Gary last couple weeks ago or whatever on his Root Notes. Yeah,
Root Notes.
Oh, that was a great time.
He went by again.
There, I see him. Santa Claus.
Santa's going to have to go for New Year's. I don't know what Kurt's going to put on there, the producer, but he'll come up with something.
Something flashy.
I'm sure Kelly's going to tell him, don't do things that move. Yeah. I got to keep Fish's attention, right?
That's great.
So I love that you are not interested in just promoting what you have, but combining that and promoting what others have for the sole purpose in the end of helping people know these things. So the mandate for LPFMs, which is what we are, is to educate and inform. So that's the radio. But then when I moved it into the podcast, I didn't change.
That's all we're going to do.
I love being local, although I can bring in like Jenna, who really has a reach with human trafficking. I mean, that thing's worldwide, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's just a matter of doing that. So I could see that, I can see that working easily for you to do the either radio or this. But like you said, you have that interest in music. So you're going to have to come up with some great theme music.
Oh, we're going to have some fun.
Do you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, 70s. I mean, absolutely. The 70s decade. I wish I was there.
Yeah, I was there.
The best decade of music I have ever heard. So, Gary got to hear me choose my 5 songs. And Bob Seger and Fleetwood Mac, of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, we just have a lot in common, don't we?
Against the Wind by Bob Seger is, quite frankly, I was saying, one of the best songs ever written in the history of music. If you sit and really dive into those lyrics and the progression from beginning to end, it is an entire movie. You can write a movie on that song. Yeah. On the one song, 5 minutes can alter your life. So that was my first song on there. But, being able to sit and dive into music that way, not just playing the songs, but really sitting and talking about lyrics, letting people open their minds to what people are telling them. I mean, it's life-changing. It's like scripture.
Yeah.
You just, if you really think about the words, I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
Yeah.
Bob Seger said that in Against the Wind. I mean, what a line, So, if we can sit and dive into music too, Fish, I mean, we're going to have some fun.
93Q Radio was an opportunity for what's called an LPFM to give the community a voice.
The big part of what's happening here is it's us. It's the community of us.
The work that Mr. Fischetti has done with us to promote public education has been absolutely groundbreaking.
They have the pulse of our community, from the nonprofits to the local governments. If you want to find out what's happening in our community, get on board with 93Q.
And 93Q does so much to help our community, helps us promote our local events, as well as local businesses, and tell our story about what we do here in Yuba Sutter.
The folks that work here, they're part of our community, so they understand our needs, and that's important.
Local radio is so important. During times of emergency, they're there. We lean on them to provide information to our public.
My wife and I are glad to support 93Q. We're going to do it on a monthly basis, but I really recommend that if you want to make your community better, it's a great place to take a first step right here.
So if you can, reach deep into your pocket and give to 93Q.
93Q is a great partner for law enforcement, and they're a great partner for the Yuba Sutter area.
We're really asking people if you can give $10, $15, $20 a month, and then that enables us to continue to put small business spots on the air, nonprofits, organizations that are they're using every dollar they got just to operate, and they don't have extra money to spend on really promoting their cause. And that is why community radio, to me, I'm grateful to be part of it, and that's why it's important.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm glad that after being on the air that you saw something of value here and thought, I want to be part of that. And we're going to make that happen to the best of our ability. You're multifaceted, right? So it's really easy for you to not just do a program, but be on somebody else's program. And it's just a walk in the park for you because you're right. That whole public being able to talk, you're not shy, right? But you're very compassionate. And I think that's a key in trying to help the people get along. It's like if you listen to enough hatred, it'll eventually get in you.
That's right.
And so it's how do you keep the well clean, right? And so I think the more that we can do, there was a Christian radio station, I think it's K-Love, that they advertise as being positive and encouraging. And I'm thinking, well, what's wrong with that, right?
That's right.
And so although our mandate is to educate and inform, I certainly believe that we can be positive and encouraging in the way we educate and inform. Why should I point out everything that's bad? And you are definitely one who's been through enough that you're probably older than your years. I would guess you at 25.
I'm 40.
Oh, my God. I must look like a grandpa. I am a grandpa.
I'm feeling advanced, Fish. I'm starting to feel advanced. I'm not going to call it geriatric, but we're calling it advanced.
Oh, geriatric. Whoa.
I'm going to call it advanced. When
I just want to tell you, this is the last time that Lacey will ever be on the air with me.
When things are starting to hurt out of nowhere, on here.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'll get used to it.
Sound like my mom when I'm trying to pick something up off the floor,
Why am I groaning over that?
No, we're going to have fun, Fish. I think that bringing some real true, like you said, informative, educational, but it does go hand in hand with positive and loving and all of those things. It really does. And just because you educate somebody maybe on a topic that's hard to listen to, like human trafficking, it doesn't mean it can't also be positive.
Yeah.
Because it's educational.
Because, yes.
We're helping.
Exactly.
So there are so many great groups in this area. We can bring them to the forefront, to 93Q and to the podcast here, whether it's In the Tank or Connect with Me, and just really make a local difference, and then hopefully push this out globally. So
I have to ask you, we're going to run out of time. So do you already have a YouTube channel?
I do.
Okay, what is that?
It's Lacey Nelson, just Lacey, Nelson, like Willie Nelson. So my Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channel, TikTok, everything's under Lacey Nelson.
Lacey Nelson.
Yeah.
And so I just want to tell you folks, I'm really grateful for Lacey to come on, but we want to work with her because of where she's at. I mean, besides the fact I just like her, but I can't let personal things get out. But I really think that this fits what we're doing. But she already has a YouTube channel that'll give you opportunity to go there, and that's Lacey Nelson, Lacey Nelson. And then so it's an opportunity to the things that that she carries and wants to communicate, for you to have an opportunity to do that. And then also, she will be having a program here on 93Q. We're already putting that together, and we're going to let you know as soon as that happens. And then I'm always supposed to say, like, subscribe, and share. Right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I got it. Like, subscribe, and share this video and others. I'm glad that you could hang with us today, Lacey.
Thank you, Fish.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, there's two tables in the world. There's the one table called the cool table, right? And then there's all those other tables. You get to sit at the cool table.
I love it.
The prerequisite for sitting at the cool table is you have to have sat at the other tables long enough to appreciate it.
I love that. Yes.
Welcome to the cool table. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. We'll be back with Kelly. I think we have a Christmas message coming up for you guys. And then we'll be back with just great people we're interviewing. Look for Lacey Nelson, Lacey Nelson. Go see her YouTube channel. And then look for a program showing up here on 93Q. And 93Q, we're going to bring her back in the tank once she gets doing the other stuff. Thanks for watching.